I ventured into a town that vanished, but what I found changed everything. In the early 2000s, an entire town went missing for a year. There was no evacuation order, no natural disaster, no signs of struggle, just a quiet, abrupt disappearance. One day, the town was there. The next, it wasn't. Satellite imagery confirmed it. Roads that once led into the settlement faded into overgrown trails. Utility lines stretched into empty fields. Even the town's name was erased from state records as if it had never existed at all. And then, just as suddenly, it came back. A surveyor spotted it first. He was mapping a new highway route when his GPS glitched, showing a location that shouldn't exist. When he followed the road, he found himself standing at the edge of a town that hadn't been there the day before. The streets were intact. The houses stood just as they had a year prior. Storefronts still displayed faded close signs in their windows, untouched by time or weather. But the town was empty. No people, no vehicles, no signs of life at all. The air smelled stale as if it had been sealed away. Doors stood ajar, revealing homes frozen mid-moment. Meals half-eaten, water left running in sinks long dried out. The school still had lesson plans scrawled on the chalkboards, dates circled from the week the town vanished. Clocks hung on the walls, hands unmoving, all frozen at the same exact time, 3:17 a.m. The investigation that followed raised more questions than answers. Security footage pulled from nearby camera hard drives showed the townspeople going about their normal routines, until the final recording. A grainy gas station camera caught the last moments before the disappearance. At 3:16 a.m., streetlights flickered. The sky above the town turned a deep, unnatural black. And then, static. When the footage resumed, the town was gone. Authorities tried to make sense of the town's reappearance. Soil samples, radiation tests, air quality scans, all normal. The case was quietly buried, dismissed as a mass evacuation event with no official explanation. The town was left to rot, a curiosity for urban explorers and conspiracy theorists. That was how the reports told it anyway. A mystery wrapped in red tape, whispered about in late-night forums, and buried under layers of speculation. I still remember reading about this town ever since I was little. The way the news reports buried it, the way forums dissected every grainy image, every hushed government statement. It wasn't just another ghost town. It was something else, something wrong. And now, after a month-long journey, I finally found it. The trees parted like a curtain, revealing the road ahead. Faded asphalt, cracked and broken, stretched into the town's outskirts. Buildings stood in the gloom, their silhouettes sharp against the overcast sky. The air was still, too still. No wind, no birds, just a heavy, suffocating quietness. I took a step forward. Gravel crunched beneath my boots. The silence pressed in closer. From where I stood, the town looked untouched by time. A gas station on the corner, its neon sign dark and lifeless. A diner with sun-faded menus still taped to the windows. A row of houses, their doors slightly ajar, as if waiting for someone to step inside. I swallowed hard. The reports said it came back exactly as it was, that no dust had settled, no decay had set in. But seeing it with my own eyes was something else entirely. It didn't feel abandoned, it felt paused. I checked my watch, 5:42 p.m. If the stories were true, I had until 3:17 a.m. before I had to start worrying. I should turn back. I should set up camp outside, watch from a safe distance. But I've come too far to hesitate now. Taking a breath, I stepped over the threshold, and the town swallowed me whole. For the first few hours in the town, I explored every corner it had to offer. I wandered through silent streets, past street signs still gleaming under the overcast sky, past pavement uncracked, untouched by time. The houses stood like perfect snapshots of the past. Front doors left ajar, curtains swaying in the still air, as if someone had just walked out moments ago. I stepped into one home after another, moving through kitchens where spotless plates still sat on dining tables, past living rooms where televisions were frozen mid-broadcast, their screens unbroken but lifeless. Bedrooms were eerily intact, sheets still creased from where bodies had once slept, closets filled with clothes that smelled faintly of detergent, as if they had been washed just yesterday. Everything was pristine, preserved, paused. If this had been a living, breathing neighborhood, I would have been seen as a burglar, maybe even arrested. But there was no one left to call the cops, no one left to care. And yet, as I roamed through the town, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I continued exploring until nightfall struck, and I swear to you, every time I turned a corner, I could see them. Just at the edge of my vision, a group of people standing perfectly still, watching. But every time I snapped my head around, there was nothing, just empty streets, dimly lit by streetlights that shouldn't still be working. I told myself it was just my imagination. The mind plays tricks when you're alone in a place like this. Shadows stretch wrong, shapes morph in the dim glow. But deep down, I knew better. I wasn't alone. Now, if I were a normal person, I would have turned around and gotten the hell out of there. Any sane person would have. But unfortunately, I'm not normal. Don't get me wrong, I'm not crazy or anything, but I have something to prove. I could still hear my father's voice, clear as the day he first said it. "Jack, give up on this dream, son. Go pursue a fulfilling future," he had told me one evening, watching me push my food around my plate, too lost in my own thoughts to eat. "This town isn't real. Me and your mother, we're starting to worry about this obsession." His voice had carried something deeper than frustration. Worry, fear. I barely looked up from my plate when I answered. "The town is real." My voice came out steadier than I expected. I wanted to sound confident, like I had no doubts, but deep down, I knew this wasn't just about proving the town existed. It was about proving I was right. Dad sighed, setting his fork down with a dull clink. Jack, listen to yourself. You're talking like one of those lunatics on conspiracy forums. There's no proof. There never was. That's because they buried it, I snapped, finally looking at him. His tired eyes met mine, the weight of years spent worrying pressing into the lines on his face. Every official report contradicts itself. The satellite images, the real ones, don't match what the public records say. Hell, even people who lived near it said the roads just stopped leading there after it vanished. You think that's normal? Mom shifted uncomfortably in her seat, glancing between us. She never liked it when we argued. Honey, you think I'm crazy, don't you? My stomach was in knots. I could already tell where this was going. Dad sighed again, rubbing his temples. It's not about crazy, Jack. It's about moving on. About not wasting your life chasing ghosts. I don't know why you're so fixated on this place, but you have to let it go. It's not healthy. Healthy. That was always their word for it. Like I was sick. Like my need to know, to understand, was some kind of disease. I pushed my chair back, standing up so fast it scraped against the floor. You think I'm wasting my life? Fine, but I'm not letting this go. Not until I know the truth. And now here I was, standing in the middle of the town that supposedly didn't exist. They had been wrong. I had been right. But as I stood there, the darkness pressing in, that feeling of unseen eyes lingering at the edge of my vision, I started to wonder, had I made a mistake? I continued exploring, my heart pounding in my chest as the shadows deepened. The air grew thick with an almost tangible weight, and the town, still frozen in time, began to feel less like an eerie curiosity and more like a place waiting for something. As I drew closer to 3:17 a.m., something shifted. That nagging feeling at the back of my mind, the one that whispered I wasn't alone, grew louder. Those things I had seen in the corners of my vision, they weren't just flickers anymore. No, they were closer now. So close I could almost hear the soft shuffle of their feet on the untouched pavement, and I could see them. I could see them clearly now. At first, I thought I was imagining it. After all, the mind plays tricks in silence like this. But no, they were real, and they were smiling. Not a normal smile. Not the kind of grin you'd give when you saw an old friend or shared a joke. This smile, this thing, it stretched unnaturally across their faces. It was like it was forced, stitched from one side of their mouth to the other, as if their lips couldn't stop curling, no matter how hard they tried to break free from it. And their eyes, God, their eyes. They weren't just blank or lifeless. No, they were pale. Pale in a way that made my stomach twist. Bloodshot like they hadn't blinked in years, maybe decades. Their eyes stared at me, wide and unblinking, as if they had been stuck in place for the last 20 years. Frozen, unseeing, until now, until me. I don't know how many of them there were. 3, 4, I couldn't say for sure. They appeared out of nowhere, stepping from behind lampposts, peering from behind the corners of houses, slowly inching toward me, their smiles never faltering. Their presence was suffocating, and every step I took seemed to pull them closer, like magnets drawing me in. I could feel my breath hitching in my throat. What the hell were they? My mind screamed at me to run, to get the hell out of there before they reached me, before they closed the distance. But my legs felt like lead, my body frozen in place. One of them took a step forward, and I could hear the creak of their bones, an almost imperceptible sound that made my skin crawl. Their smile grew wider, impossibly wide, and the corner of their mouth twitched with a sickening, inhuman joy. I took a shaky step back, but my feet felt as if they were glued to the ground. The darkness around me seemed to pulse, to throb with a rhythm that matched my panicked heartbeat. It was like I was staring at something that shouldn't exist, something that was never meant to be real. But they were. They were here, and they were waiting for something. Waiting for me to cross a line I didn't even know was there. The air shifted again, stale, thick, and I could feel it. The moment was approaching. I had moments left. 3:17 a.m. was closing in. I didn't want to be here when it hit, but there was no turning back now. It was around 3:15 a.m. when they finally spoke. At first, it was just a low murmur, something barely audible, like a whisper carried on the wind. It was unintelligible, a jumble of sounds that scraped against my nerves like broken glass. My skin prickled, and every inch of me screamed to run, to turn around and leave this godforsaken town behind. But then, as the clock ticked closer to 3:17, their voices began to clarify. In perfect, chilling unison, all of them, those pale-eyed, bloodshot creatures, spoke. Jack, you're gonna join us. There's no getting out. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My breath caught in my throat, a cold shiver crawling down my spine. How the hell did they know my name? I staggered back, my feet slipping on the cracked pavement, my mind struggling to process what I was hearing. There was no way they could know me. They couldn't. They were just things stuck in time. Ghosts of a town that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. But they repeated it, over and over, each of them speaking in perfect harmony, their voices twisted and warped, yet unmistakably clear. Jack, you're going to join us. There's no getting out. It wasn't just a warning, it was fact etched into the very air around me. The way they said my name, Jack, it wasn't just recognition, it was ownership. As if they had always known me, as if they had been waiting for me. I stumbled back, almost tripping over the curb as I tried to make sense of it all. Who were they? What were they? Why did they want me to join them? And was I the first one, or had they taken people before? The smile stretched wider on their faces, those unnatural grins that seemed to grow with every passing second, and their eyes, those dead, lifeless eyes, never left me. They were watching, waiting, and all I could do was stand there, rooted in place, paralyzed by the cold certainty of their words. I tried to move, to run, but my body felt heavy. Every instinct told me to flee, but my feet wouldn't respond. The town had a grip on me now, a grip I couldn't break free from. And then, just as the final seconds ticked away, just as the hands of the clock came within a hair's breadth of 3:17, their voices came again, louder this time. "Jack, there's no getting out." This was the last known record of Jack's experience, buried deep within a 4chan thread that someone had tried and failed to erase. His words lingered like a ghost in the machine, a warning lost in the depths of the internet. The air grew heavier, pressing against my chest as I stared at the figures. Their smiles widened, their bloodshot eyes locking onto mine. And then I saw him, the younger one. His face was like the others, frozen in that unnatural grin, but his eyes, they were different. Less faded, less hollow, almost familiar, almost human. My breath stopped as I realized where I'd seen him before, in the missing persons posters, the grainy photo, the desperate pleas from a family who had long given up hope. It was Jack, the Jack from the forums, the Jack who had written those final, frantic words, the Jack who had vanished just like the others. The clock ticked, 3:17 a.m. Their voices came again, louder now, echoing in the stillness. "You're next." The words weren't just a warning, they were a promise that had been made to Jack, and to who knows how many others before him. And now, it was my turn. I wanted to run, to scream, to do anything, but my feet were rooted to the ground. The town had claimed me just as it had claimed Jack, just as it would claim anyone foolish enough to seek its secrets. And as the darkness closed in, I understood. The town wasn't just stuck in time. It was alive, hungry, waiting for more to join it. The air grew colder, the silence heavier, and I felt it. The pull, the inevitability. My feet moved on their own, carrying me toward the figures, toward Jack, toward the grinning, pale-eyed things that had been waiting for you to join them.